Hi, I'm Gil Benbrook from Phoenix Stages and TalkinBroadway.com, and I'm here with Kurtis Overby, the director and choreographer of Rock of Ages at Arizona Broadway Theater, which runs through June 19th. So Kurtis you were in the very first show here at ABT.
Yeah, as an actor, I was in Anything Goes, which was, we call it, Anything Went in the Tent, because it was not actually in the building. Yeah, so it was in a building.
And that was about...
That was 11 years ago. That was the first show, and then I came on full-time about 3 or 4 years after that.
Okay.
So I've been here full-time.
And you've directed and choreographed and starred in numerous shows here over the years that you worked here. So let's talk about Rock of Ages. It's it's set in a very recent, distant past, the decadent 80s. It's a heavy metal rock score of some of the best known hits from the 80s. But it also is a show that has universal themes about romance and people pursuing their dreams, but also taking risks. But it's still a really strange mashup of rock music and Broadway.
Yes,
so
definitely.
So why do you think people who love Broadway musicals should come and see Rock of Ages?
Well, I mean, I think the Broadway musical has a definite structure to it, and that's what's so cool about Rock of Ages. It still has that Broadway musical structure, so anyone that really loves a Broadway musical is going to love this. It's just, we've got 80s music to support the Broadway musical structure of it all.
And I guess sort of like a classic Rodgers and Hammerstein show where you know the score, like The King and I, you already know all the score. You know
the entire thing we talked about.
So, and speaking of the songs, I mean, some of the songs in the show, even though there's like these rock anthems, they have some really emotional lyrics in them.
Absolutely.
And I think that really helps in telling the story.
Absolutely.
But it also sort of spins the songs on a year. It mashes up some songs together. Why do you think these rock songs from the 80s work so well to tell a traditional story? Because it's basically a boy meets girl story.
Well, I think you look at the lyric. You've sung these songs, I don't know how many times. I know
Don't Stop Believin'.
Don't Stop Believin'. But in the context of the show, you start going, oh, that's what that means. In the show, in the context of the show. Maybe not originally, but in the context of the show, you listen to the lyric and you go, oh, I sang that for so many years. That's what it meant. And I think that's the draw, and I think that's the connection that the audience will get when we're talking about the music and the story itself.
Well, because I think the original creators of the show did a really good job in finding songs that sort of fit into the characters, that made it seem like the characters were speaking. And I think that's, like you said, why as an audience member, you actually hear the lyrics differently because they're coming from a character that you're now invested in.
Exactly. Yep.
So the show's been done. The show was a huge hit off Broadway, moved to Broadway, was nominated for a bunch of Tony Awards. It's really like a part rock and roll concert, part musical. And on Broadway and the tour, I mean, it's turned into this big phenomenon where people are like singing along and dancing in the aisles. How do you think that experience is going to be here at ABT?
Well, I'm pushing it to make it the same.
You'll be dancing in the aisles at every performance?
I will be here. No, I will not be here. But we're hoping that can, I think it translates no matter where you do the show. It's just that type of show. And you're going to want to stand up. You're going to want to sing along. And I want people to sing along. That's part of the fun of the show, I think.
So why do you think audiences went so crazy over the show, or go crazy over the show? Is it the music? Is it what do you think it is about the show?
Number one, the music, absolutely, because you recognize it and it takes you back to somewhere you were in 1987 or something. It definitely takes you back. But I also think it's got this edge to it where it's still a newer piece of musical theater. So it's got this edge to it, and it's kind of naughty in so many ways, and I think people kind of love that. They like to have this mixture of something that's really familiar to them and something that's kind of a little naughty on the side. So I love that.
So you've, as I said, you've acted and also directed and choreographed a bunch of shows here at ABT. So how does directing and choreographing Rock of Ages compare, or how do you have to change what you're doing when doing, like I said, like a more traditional
well, again, this is such a new piece of theater. There's so many elements that you don't really have to think about sometimes when you're doing an older piece, a classic like King and I, when we did King and I, or Oklahoma. Those were really those were a lot easier for us and me personally.
And probably the audiences sort of have an expectation because
Absolutely.
they've been, some of those shows are 40, 50, 60 years old.
Some of them have never seen this. They don't even know what this is about. Please come to see it. There's so many different elements like video and sound, the different sound things, the bands on stage. I mean, it's a 5-piece rock band that's going to literally melt your face off.
That's not a good selling point.
It's really great if you're a rocker. You're going to have fun getting your face
I was talking about video screens, and on Broadway, the video screens are a big component of the set.
Yeah.
So the show again is set in the 80s on the Sunset Strip in LA.
Yeah.
So how are you recreating that experience on the ABT stage?
Well, I mean, in the original, of course, we're still doing that same premise because the script just says that you should. And I mean, when the script is that good, you don't mess with it. You have to have slides, you have to have the video. They're just dictated, and you should have those. How are we doing it? It's very similar to the Broadway production. The Broadway production is basically in the same room, same space. It's just lighting it differently and which slide or which video is on the screen at that time. It kind of puts you in a different place. And our lighting designer, Will Kirkham, is brilliant in this. He's done just a fantastic job.
Good. So it's set in the 80s, so let's talk about 80s music. So who's your favorite 80s rock band?
Def Leppard.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
And nothing more on that.
And unfortunately, we can't use any of their music. They didn't allow us to use any of their, when they wrote it, they didn't allow them to use any of their music.
Well, I know you and I were talking about this. I think in the beginning, when they tried to license the music, nobody knew what the show was going to be.
Right.
So a lot of the original rock performers didn't want to license their music.
Exactly. But when they found out.
Yeah. And it's like, hey, we went in, but I guess it was too late. It's like too bad.
Too late.
So the show is the 80s look, the scary 80s look when we look back at the way people dressed in the 80s.
Oh yeah.
So
it's happening.
Did you ever rock the glam rock look?
Did I ever rock? No, I didn't. I never.
You're like a preppy 80s kid.
I was a preppy 80s kid. I never rocked the glam look. Looking back, I wish I would have, but no.
Seriously, okay. I don't. Yeah. So the show is set again on the LA's the Sunset Strip in LA in the 80s. Mm-hmm. If you were back then, like what classic rock song would you rock out to, like they do in the show? Or is there one song in the show that you have taken a different, has really struck you differently now than you originally thought?
It's this one little clip of the song in Act 1. The character Sherry sings it. She sings more than words, and it took a completely different meaning for me once I started reading and really delving into staging the whole thing. The way they did it was so incredibly clever that I was like, I love this song even more than I used to. And it's a fantastic moment in the show.
All right, so if you could just in a few words, how would you describe Rock of Ages?
Naughty.
You keep coming back to naughty.
It is very adult themed. I mean, it's not something that I would say, bring your kids, bring the whole family. There's some scenes in it that you're probably going to go, oh, okay, or you'll have a wonderful time. I would. But as crazy as people think Rock of Ages is, it's still, like we were talking about before, it's still a Broadway musical, and it's hard. And it's still
with great characters.
The characters are
Drew
phenomenal.
and Sherry.
Drew, Sherry, Lonnie, Dennis, all of them. Stacy Jacks. That's a good character. But it's still at its heart, it's still a Broadway musical, and I think that's so incredibly important to all of the audiences.
Okay, thanks, Kurtis.
Thank you.
Rock of Ages at Arizona Broadway Theater through June 19th.